This episode of Popcorn Poops is brought to you by Audible.com. Please visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for a 30-day trial of their audiobook subscription service. When you sign up, you'll even receive a free audiobook that's yours to keep whether or not you continue with Audible after your trial has expired. That's audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for your free audiobook.
We are the Pumpkin Poops. Hello and welcome to Pumpkin Poops, the best married couple movie podcast / commentary track hybrid audio program on the internet. My name is Dustin, and with me as always is my especially scary wife, Jessica.
Especially scary.
Especially now because it's October. It's Shocktober, right?
Yeah.
And everything is just a little bit spoopier in October. Even the popcorn poops, which are actually the pumpkin poops.
Yeah, we're the pumpkin poops now.
Just for 4 weeks. Calm down. I
really like it when we're the pumpkin poops,
let's
though.
Not get excited.
Because then I get to force you to watch all horror movies.
That's very true. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. That hasn't changed. On iTunes, where you can subscribe to us. You can also listen to us on Stitcher. We are a podcast, so we're in all those usual places. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. We'd really appreciate that. That's where you can keep up with all announcements regarding the show. It's probably the easiest place to get announcements regarding the show, including our weekly movie still identification game, which is a whole lot of fun. You can get mentioned on the show. So just follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and you'll get all that stuff dumped right into your feed where your eyeballs will see it. This month, our theme is what?
Science fiction horror movies.
Science fiction horror movies. And last week we kicked it off wonderfully, I think, with not because the podcast was wonderful, but the movie that we covered was wonderful. In John Carpenter's film, of course, The Thing, right, from 1982. So this week we are going to continue that theme of science fiction horror with a David Cronenberg film, the second we've ever done on the show, the second David Cronenberg film, that is, from 1986. His movie, The Fly. We're very excited about that. So if you are planning on syncing the movie up to the podcast so you can listen along while you watch, you'll want to pause your movie as soon as the title card reading Brooks Films Presents fades to black. As soon as that title card fades to black, you'll want to pause that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pass it off to my wife to read a review that we received on iTunes.
No.
Or received on Stitcher.
No.
Did we receive a review?
We didn't receive any at all.
No. Well, that's not spooky. That's just sad.
It is just sad.
So next week, we would really, really like to read a review on the show. So if you haven't left us a review yet on iTunes or Stitcher, jump on there, leave us a star review. Any star review is fine. Whatever you think we deserve, write us a little write-up, and we will read it on the show.
I really like it when there are 5 stars.
I especially enjoy the 5 stars, but if I think I suggested last week that you leave a 5-star review and then actually just write what you really feel about us. So it's like 5 stars. This show sucks. So next week we'd like to read that review. So if you haven't done that yet, we would really appreciate it if you do that. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into the movie. So sinkers, press play at the beat after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And we're off with the Baron of Body Horror, David Cronenberg's 1986 film, The Fly, the year I was born.
Yeah, it is.
How about that? I brought this movie into the world with me.
That's wonderful.
It's my gift to the world was not just me, it was this movie, because obviously if you were born in 1986, this belongs to you.
Yeah,
That's
of course.
just makes sense.
Yeah, logic.
Yes, logic and reason. I really like the title card in this movie. It's not as good as The Thing from last week. It's not as good. It's not as complicated as The Thing, but I do really like the opening credits right here. I like the credit sequence, and I like the title itself. I think it's very cool, kind of its time, but appropriate, right?
I like what is happening here in this opening sequence. What does this look like to you?
Mutation, science. I think it's actually
it looks like I don't know. I thought it was like people walking around. It looks like a
crowd of people, doesn't it? I don't think it's supposed to be, but I think that's probably where the visual information originally came
I can
from.
definitely see legs and stuff in there. It really looks like a crowd of people.
It is. It's almost definitely a crowd of people walking around, but I don't think that's what it's.
But it kind of looks like insects or something too, right? Like
Right,
it's
well,
kind of
there you go.
kind of got that
You got bugs
that
on the
look
brain
to it that it's
because-
like maybe science-y or something, or
Right.
it's like parasites or whatever squirming around on the screen.
Mutation. It's
People, I love how this
something
movie
gross.
starts. I love
Well,
how
there,
this
there
movie.
it is right there. That's what the fuck it is. We just saw
Oh,
it. We're
okay.
so
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah, we
Yes,
are
it's,
stupid.
It's these people walking around at this party,
And they're actually bugs.
and they look so tiny because bugs. And the fly.
I love how this movie just starts in the middle of a conversation. Just starts in the middle of a conversation.
You know who that's taking a page from, right? Shakespeare. Shakespeare loved doing
Yeah,
that
that's
shit.
true.
Shakespeare
That's
would
true,
just
he did.
drop you into a scene and be like, "They've been talking. It doesn't matter. Like
It doesn't matter. Just
this
just
is where it
listen up.
starts.
This
It's
is
fine."
this is the part that matters. Like the other stuff before, whatever.
So the first real shot of a character in this movie is Goldblum's face, Jeff Goldblum's face.
I mean, it's a great
It's
opening
a great
shot.
opening shot. Welcome back to the show, Jeff Goldblum. We just had you
yes.
on several weeks ago when we
did.
did Jurassic Park.
You can come on as often as you want, really.
Often
Jeff
as you
Goldblum.
want, Jeff Goldblum, please. But I think that the first shot of his face has me convinced that he was cast for his big bug eyes, pun intended. I'm telling you, bugs on the brain, man. And in the first exchange between them, that you'll notice that he's almost looking directly into the camera, like really showing off those eyeballs, while Gina Davis's character's gaze is slightly farther off. And there's another exchange later in the movie that I think parallels that first exchange, in which their gazes and their relationship to the camera is very, very similar. And I'll try to bring it up if I can remember to later on. But
yeah, I definitely think his bug eyes are part of why he was cast.
I
mean,
might
but not
also be the magnificent mullet.
could be.
Could be.
But anyone can grow a mullet. Let's be real. Like a mullet, you could fake a mullet. You can't fake bug eyes.
I think this is him getting her back to his apartment has to be the most original pickup strategy of all time.
Yeah, probably.
Where he's
I'm
just
a scientist and I have a super fantastic product, and I'll make you cappuccino.
Yeah, I'll make you cappuccino with my FIMA machine.
Whatever that is.
FIMA. I don't know what that is.
It's the real stuff, though.
Maybe it's like what Keurig is now. Like it's the Keurig of 1986, where if you say FIMA, people are just like, "Oh God,
Oh,
yes.
or they're like, "Oh,
yes.
you're one of those people."
Oh, you're weird. Get away.
Oh my God, though. Yeah, he's just, I mean, I know every time Jeff Goldblum comes on Popcorn Poops, we just praise Jeff Goldblum a lot. But so I have to do that part here where I just praise how, I love the way he talks, just the cadence to his voice.
Okay. I'm every time he comes on the show, I promise that we're going to say this. I know we said this during the Jurassic Park episode. I know for a fact we did. But upon watching The Fly, I think he's at maximum Goldblum here.
Is he maximum Goldblum in this movie?
I think before I said maybe he was maximum Goldblum in Jurassic Park, and I take that back. I think he's maximum Goldblum.
I think
in
he's
The Fly.
maximum Goldblum in whatever I watch him in, because he
guess.
just always plays Goldblum.
He's just always the Goldblum.
I love how in this scene he's talking while he's playing the piano, and so like when he says
he actually plays the piano.
oh, he actually does. That's
Yes.
fantastic.
Jeff Goldblum.
I mean,
of course he
of
does.
course he does. It's Jeff Goldblum. But like when he says something that's like scary or whatever, he uses like minor keys and
Yeah.
right. Like it's cute. It's a
really
cute little touch.
Well, we haven't welcomed back our co-star of this film, Gina Davis. Welcome back to the Popcorn Poops. It's been, well, what episode are we on? This is episode 54. Is that right? 53,
I
54?
don't know. I don't keep up with that stuff.
So
That's all you.
It's been like 53 episodes, 54 episodes since she's been on the show, because she was in Beetlejuice, the very first movie we ever covered for this show.
Okay.
And this is her first time back. So
Wow.
welcome back, Gina
Welcome
Davis.
back.
This is I hope it's a warm welcome for you, because I really like what you do in this movie. I really like what you do in Beetlejuice. I really like what you do, just in general.
I like how you're talking to her directly.
Well, Gina,
Wait a minute. Now you're talking to me like you think I'm Gina.
Gina? What are you talking
This is
about, Gina?
Changing things a little bit here. Okay, so I do want to talk about this before we get away from it. But like there is a distinct period of time in these early scenes between them where if I were her, I would be like, he's going to rape me. I'm about to get raped here tonight. Because like when they pull up to his apartment.
But look at her pulling off this stocking.
I know.
She's I don't know. I don't think she sees him as threatening because he's a nerd. And that reaction, the reaction to her pulling off her stocking that he gives is he's just like smiles and goes, mm-hmm.
I half expect him to smell it here.
Yeah.
Like I really am just waiting for him to sniff it.
Let's be fair. Of all of the weird, gross, like pseudoscience transformations and body horror crap in this movie, the least believable part of this is how charming and charismatic this antisocial science obsessed nerd is. He, like that moment with the stocking, that should be a creepy moment. And he somehow manages to make it sexy, like
he does.
The way he handles the stocking and says,
like,
You're like, oh,
and you're like, what? Huh?
Jeff Goldblum, I'm a little hard right now. And we haven't even kind of seen his penis yet.
Yeah,
because you do kind of get to see his penis later, which is very exciting. Very exciting.
Anyways, back to her needing to be more concerned for not getting raped. When they pull up to his place that he's living, right? And it's like in this dark alley in this, clearly like desolate looking building. And she pulls up to it and she even looks at him and is like, it's here. And I mean, that would be the point in the drive where I'd be like, now he takes out a gun. Like,
oh, geez,
now he takes out a knife. Like, now that we are back at the back of this building in this dark, scary place and I've gotten into a car with a stranger, this is what happens next. And then later on in the scene, he does the whole thing where he's playing the piano, and when he does one of the scary little, riffs on the piano, he says, "Can't let you leave here alive." And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I would think I was going to die tonight.
Well, here's the secret that you don't know. She's armed. So,
okay,
and all he has are these telepods. Let's talk about the telepods. I think the telepods are really cool. It's one of my favorite elements of this movie is like how the telepods themselves are really dark and sleek, and like there's even a moment in the movie where they become vaginal to me. Like I think like
the way they open up and
the way they open up the doors on them,
the shape of the doors,
especially, and it never becomes clear that that's what they look like until Seth Brundle, Jeff Goldblum's character, actually teleports himself.
Well, I mean, he talks about the birth of the teleportation. Like,
yeah, it's like it's a rebirth. It's about the new flesh,
and they kind of look like egg shapes, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Very egg shaped. I'm very pleased with like how proud he is of his telepod like branding that he has for himself, because she said, I forget what she says, but she misspeaks and says something like phone booth, and he's like telepod.
That was very good right there.
Oh, and the computer totally makes fun of him. Like when he says something into the computer, and the computer repeats it back to him, it says like along with it, like his little begin the whatever sequence, the transportation sequence or whatever it is, and it's like begin the sequence, begin the sequence. Over
I didn't catch that. That's good. That's a good catch.
It's a little, I don't know, like it's a little self-aware for a movie that feels this early in his career, where it's just like
that knows that like this is what Jeff Goldblum sounds like
already, already this early. It's like, no, this is just the Goldblum. This
is how you talk Goldblum. This is how you speak Goldblum.
The telepods themselves, the inspiration for their design came from the shape of the cylinder in David Cronenberg's vintage Ducati motorcycle, which is really interesting to me since the pods are distinctly H.R. Giger-esque in their design. Like they look like something out of one of the Alien movies.
Yeah, that's true.
To be perfectly honest, they're black and they've got ridges. They look like almost bony. You might even call them bony.
Yeah.
which would
like there's some organic structure or something.
Right, exactly, which fits kind of nicely into Cronenberg's motifs of the body and the flesh and the degradation of that and all that.
That's
kind of
true.
stuff.
That does fit in. By the way, I just remembered another line that she says that's creepy right there in the beginning that like solidifies the creep is the line where he's like, "Do you have something on you that's personal?" Like, it just goes from creep to creepier to, like, just straight out totally creepy.
Yeah, in a matter of minutes, really.
Yeah. But, I mean, I say that and then also, concede that it turns into sexy somehow. But if I were her, the warning signals would be going off in my brain.
She's supposed to be a journalist, and she's at this party, this gathering of scientific minds, and she's supposed to be interviewing people. And, Seth Brundle takes her back to his apartment and shows her this amazing thing. And then she pulls out a tape recorder and he's all like offended or worried that she's going to let this slip. But he is kind of an idiot, right? He is kind of an idiot for not realizing that she's a journalist. And she even told him at the party that she had to interview three other people. Yeah,
I had to interview 3 other people. So I don't know, like, if he was just so blinded by vagina that he didn't, like, he wasn't listening to what she had to say.
That's all I can think is that it was a sexual thing or it's, I don't know.
It's weird with his character because you're right. He is so.
Which is to say that he's so blinded, like he uses his work as a means to, to get sex, so to speak, as though it's a commodity, is very. You've been reading him. It's very Freudian.
We're not going to talk about Freud, are we?
No, we're not. I think we mentioned Freud in last week's episode.
Yeah, start talking about how maybe Brundle saw his mother when she was naked and then realized that her penis was missing. It's
all about getting back into the womb. That's all it's really about.
Everything's about your mother's missing penis.
All right, so check this out. Well, we already missed him because we've been talking about other shit, but Gina Davis's boss, actually her name is Veronica. Her character's name is Veronica Quaife? Dare I say?
Are you going to say Queef?
Queef? Veronica Queef?
Pretty sure that's not her name.
That's okay. But her boss, his character's name is Stathis Borans, played by John Getz. He might be one of the sleaziest bearded businessmen in all of film. Second only, you know who I'm going to say, right?
Probably.
Second only to Hart Bochner playing Harry Ellis in Die Hard.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like he's number one.
Yeah, he's number one
sleazy
80s guy.
Sleazy businessman. Number 2, Stathis Borans. And in that scene, like in the first scene, he sets himself up, I think, to me, I read it as him as being a likely misogynist that has no faith in Veronica. Mm-hmm. And let's be real. Who the fuck is named Stathis that isn't like totally evil to the core?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
his name is evil name. Stathis Borans.
Yeah. It's pretty awful.
Like I know that not Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones and those books, the Song of Ice and Fire, were not even a twinkle in George R. R. Martin's eye back in the '86. I mean, maybe they were.
Probably, yeah.
Actually, they probably were.
Actually, they were. He was probably
thinking about them.
I'm sure he was already writing them.
But it just seems it's really close to like Stannis Baratheon to me. Stathis Borans, Stannis Baratheon. So I'm just like, oh, he's just a cold asshole. But he actually ends up being pretty pathetic. He's not really evil. He's just sad and sleazy.
He's sad and sleazy, and actually he becomes kind of the good guy by the end of the movie, which is such a weird turnaround.
It is.
And it makes me feel super guilty by the end because he's like horribly mutilated and stuff, and he's doing it all and still fighting for her.
It is, and it might seem a little bit out of place, but I think I heard that there was a scene in this movie where her and Stathis get back together.
Oh, really?
Like they hook back up, and it was so poorly received in like test screenings or whatever that the audience just like totally turned on the movie, and they were like, no, she cannot fuck the bearded sleaze. No.
Yeah, I mean, really, she shouldn't.
Really, she shouldn't. But I mean, I believe that's how they reacted. They were like, nope. So they just kind of excised it in whole. So that might feel.
I guess that would explain something. It must have come before the scene where she says that she's pregnant.
It must have, because he's just around.
Well, not just that, but the way he reacts, because he first goes, "Oh no." And then he goes, "Oh no."
Yeah.
And so he must have first been responding to, "Oh no, you're pregnant with my baby," and then realizes that, it's Brundle baby. And so that must have been where that response came from, where that first response came from.
This
But
line
yeah,
right
I
here.
would hate that too, to see that happen.
She walks into her apartment. Veronica walks into her apartment and finds Stathis taking a shower, and he says, "I was just in the neighborhood, felt a bit scummy."
And I'm just like, yeah, you look it too.
It's like, yeah, sorry, pal. The shower is not going to help that at all. It's not going to wash that off. That's
the
just
problem you have. It's just inherent.
Yeah. Start with the beard, but it's not helping your cause.
Wash it, but also probably just shave it and then wash the face really hard around it.
And then you can just be a normal, clean-shaven douchebag and not give beards a bad name, because I'm proselytizing for the Church of Beards.
Yeah, I can tell.
The scene right before this where they go out for cheeseburgers, there's a line that he says when he's talking about what happens when he puts not human, but living material like animals into the telepod. And she wants to know like what happens, and he says, "Not while we're eating," which to me, I feel like, and this happens a couple of times throughout the movie, I feel like it's a line that maybe like H.P. Lovecraft would be really proud of. I think it's a good example of withholding and letting the audience create the worst possible version of the horror in their minds.
Yeah.
Which in a criticism of H.P. Lovecraft, I feel like he leaned on that a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But I do think that the movie does that a couple of times. And for being a movie by David Cronenberg, who's kind of known as a filmmaker who shoots his subjects almost objectively, very matter-of-factly. He doesn't turn away. He doesn't flinch. But at the same time, there are moments where he knows that the person observing the horror, their reaction is more horrifying than the horror itself. And there's a little bit of that in this movie, which I appreciate.
Yeah, but I also appreciate that this movie shows us the grotesque stuff, because that's what I want to see in a movie like this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we missed a couple of lines that tripped me up the first time when she was in her apartment with Scumbag. He said something about Brundle leading the F-32 team. I think it's just like technobabble jargon nonsense that they made up for the movie, but apparently when he was leading that team, he was only 20 and he was an inch away from the Nobel Prize for Physics. So that's our background for how smart he's supposed to be.
And, I had this note a couple of scenes after this, actually the scene after this where he tries the same experiment on the steak. But there isn't really a lot of technobabble in this science fiction movie, right?
I love how we get this one moment and we think that's going to be it, where we're just going to see, the bloody hand on the window, and then we see where this movie is going.
See, he gives us both. That's the wonderful thing about Cronenberg, is that he allows you to wonder about what you're going to see, but then he also lets you see it, and it's wonderful.
And the thing is he could have just left it there. He could have just left it with the bloody hand on the window, and then looking at them looking at the creature, right?
I love this line coming up where she says, "Tell me what you're thinking," and he says, "Fuck is what I'm thinking."
But he could have left us there, but it was that moment in the movie where the camera turns and shows us the thing they're looking at, which is incredibly grotesque. It's this inside-out baboon that's just still alive and freaking out as it dies. And it's awful. It's so unsettling. And you go, okay, now I know what kind of a movie I'm in.
Well, exactly. And all of the creature effects and things in this movie were done by Chris Wallace, who won an Academy Award.
For this movie?
Yes. And I think that just about everything in this movie holds up to anything that you find in The Thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I have to say that I think The Thing is just just a half a step above this movie as far as like practical effects
Well,
go.
I think they're more complicated.
They're more complicated and they're more creative.
They are more creative. They're more creative. I have to admit, I don't think like the like later stage transformation of him as Brundlefly, I'm not super impressed with it. Like, the early stuff is really gross when he's just getting pimply and weird and, like, stuff starts falling off. And, like, the final Fly where, you know, it's completely, animatronics or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, too. But the one right before the end where it's just, like, a ton of makeup and he's really gross and he kind of looks like the Hunchback of Notre Dame or something, like, that version of it to me, it's not that it looks bad, but I just think that it could have been more creative, could have been more fucked up, I guess. Mm-hmm. Like we were referencing, could have taken a note from a movie like The Thing where they just, they took normal people and turned them into these horrible, horrible creatures. So, you know, something like that, I think would have benefited the ending of the prosthetics and stuff, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. But, you know, did you know that this was, this was originally, I wanted to say something about the set design. Did you know this was originally a project for Tim Burton to direct?
Really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Which is strange because I really love the look of this film and I especially love the look of his flat, right? Like this shot right here, just the colors, the color of the wall, the color of his bed, just the way all of it's kind of these dirty, muted tones. And I think that Cronenberg's work with cinematographer Mark Irwin, this was the last movie that he shot with him, and production designer Carol Spire, always brings out that kind of something dark and macabre, yet colorful.
Yeah.
And the thing I kept thinking of is like if it was a Tim Burton movie, if Tim Burton made movies for adults.
Okay.
You know, which is kind of a sick burn, but
okay.
But at the same time, like I feel like this movie, you get that kind of aesthetic without like the, you know, the kind of cartoony carnival-esque atmosphere. You know what I mean?
But I mean, doesn't Cronenberg always kind of do that? Isn't there always something kind of dark and and off about all his movies?
Recently, he's kind of become obsessed with. I think he's become obsessed with kind of the dark and sterile, whereas he used to kind of be obsessed with the dark and dingy. I don't
know. I don't think I've watched any of his recent stuff. Have you forced me to watch any of the recent stuff?
Probably not. No,
I love his old stuff.
His most recent movie was Maps to the Stars.
I didn't see it.
Which is a good movie. I think it's a good movie. I liked it quite a bit. His movie before that was Cosmopolis, which I did not care for. In fact, I think I probably hated it. I think I hate it. I think it's the only David Cronenberg movie that I hate.
The last couple of things that I've heard that he's done, I've heard about them, I feel like they're more, I don't know. Well, I don't feel like they sound weird like I want him to sound.
I miss the Cronenberg that dealt with ideas of the flesh. I miss the Cronenberg that really loved the body horror, that was, you know, the Baron of body horror. That's who he is. Everyone that feels the way I feel about Cronenberg, everyone that misses that Cronenberg, you have to, I cannot stress this enough, you have to watch Starry Eyes.
Oh my God, yes, Starry Eyes.
It's a movie from a couple of years ago, maybe last year, that came out. It actually deals with a lot of the same themes as Maps to the Stars.
Oh, okay.
Which is really fascinating to me because I feel like this is the way I keep, you know, pitching it to people who I think really would appreciate Starry Eyes for what it is. It is Maps to the Stars if Cronenberg remembered how to Cronenberg. That's the best way I can sell it.
Okay. Well, since I know nothing about Maps to the Stars, now at least I know something because I've seen Starry Eyes. So
yeah, I mean, it's about the pursuit of fame and
that makes sense.
You know, kind of him breaking down the concept of celebrity and how it can be like a mental disease, like that.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Absolutely. Starry Eyes is just, I mean, that I think that there hasn't been a body horror that was as good as Starry Eyes in a pretty long time.
Oh no, yeah, I hadn't seen one that strong.
Yeah,
in a
I
long
mean
time.
and I mean that not just like in the obvious term, which is that like the body horror itself is really good, upsetting body horror. There are some moments where she is deteriorating so much that it's just really upsetting. But like not just that, but it's such a good movie too. It's a good horror movie.
We totally we totally missed the hint. It was when he was I think it was when he was doing the steak test, and it was like a screen full of numbers, like blinking or whatever. I took a screenshot of that, and one person guessed it, at Martiello G on Twitter. Identified the movie properly just from that screenshot, which is very, very impressive. He doesn't have anything that he wants to plug, but he does want to thank us for a good show.
Oh,
so,
awesome.
You're welcome.
I think
Thank you
he
for
had,
listening.
is he the same one who had some questions too about the movie?
Yes, he did.
So we can talk about some, I mean,
Yeah,
the
go
one
ahead.
we can talk about right now is the origins of body horror.
Okay.
So since we're already on the topic of body horror, so obviously, if I assume that all listeners are familiar with this term, but just in case somebody isn't, that's where body horror is when the audience is, the intended goal is that the audience is going to be kind of grossed out by some sort of mutilation or decay or disease or parasitism or something like that.
I think that you can also group in, like, I feel in talking about the origins of body horror as he wants us to do, I feel like you can also group things about like loss of faculty, loss of agency due to some kind of mental or physical takeover. Like I feel like the best example of old body horror. Maybe you have a better example, but I think maybe Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956. I think that's a really good early example of body horror. You might have something earlier.
I have a couple. I don't have one earlier than that, but if we're just talking movies, and I'm sure you go into literature and stuff, and this stuff.
Oh yeah,
goes
we're talking about body horror in film.
way back. But in body horror and film, like the one I had that I thought was the best was maybe The Hands of Orlok.
Okay.
From 1960, and that was directed and starring the guy who did Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yes.
And so this was one where the guy's hands are transplanted with the hands of a murderer, right? So again, it's like the agency thing, where the fear is that he's not going to be able to control his actions, the actions
Right.
of his hands, and they're going to do evil things without him.
Well, I mean,
to.
if you really want to talk about literature, you could in some ways. I mean, you could say that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
It's absolutely body horror. Yeah.
I mean,
It's also the first science fiction novel.
it is.
Written by a woman. So
Just-
there to all you
just so you
publishers
know.
in the 50s who were telling women they weren't going to publish them.
David Cronenberg talked about the baboon on the DVD commentary for this, and he said that the baboons frightened him because they are potentially dangerous and they're kind of unpredictable.
Yeah.
But they had no problems with Jeff Goldblum whatsoever. Like,
The baboons loved him?
like they just,
Of course they did.
They were completely subservient to him and like basically held him as the alpha. And Cronenberg maintains that it's because Jeff Goldblum is very tall and he was in shape. He had worked out for this movie, very muscular in tone.
I'm aware.
Yes, I know you're aware. That's okay. That's all right. I get a little chub too. That's all right. Not that you get chubs or anything.
No. Not from my castrated penis. So
I've missed a bunch of stuff I wanted to talk about. I think it's interesting that Brundle uses the lessons and even the scientific work of others to achieve what he does. I mean, he even talks about how the way he gets this done is by farming out the work to people who don't really know what he's working on. And he says, I need this thing and I need this thing. And they're like, okay, we'll make it for you. But they don't know exactly what it is he's doing. And even like the way he dresses in the same clothes every day because that's brain energy that he doesn't have to spend thinking about what he's going to wear. And it's something he learned from Einstein. That's something that he preaches in a way against as Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, where there's that whole line where he talks about you stood on the shoulders of geniuses, and
he's
you
criticizing
did
them
before thinking if you could do something, you should have stopped to think if you should do
something.
Right?
Yeah, and then instead he's doing the opposite here, where he's the one who is
achieving without discipline.
Yeah,
right?
and which causes him, which is his ultimate failure. Right, that's his flaw that kills him, that destroys him by the end of the movie.
Now, the one thing that I did want to get back to that I did.
Oh my God! By the way, I want this. Can we please find a print of that
of
and
the Particle
blow it
magazine
up?
cover?
Yeah, of the Particle magazine
cover with the illustration. I do want to say that is a lot of work for Stathis to put into kind of just threatening her.
Yeah, that is true.
To put some, poor graphic designer on this project to design a cover for one of their magazines just to find out, oh wait, we're not running this. This was just for your personal.
Wait, I'm sorry, were you just fucking with me?
Weird vendetta.
What?
Like, I'm a professional, Stathis.
I hope he got paid.
I'm sure he did. But I did want to talk about the technobabble in this science fiction movie because there's not a lot of it.
No, there's not.
Here's the thing. Veronica is the character that keeps the audience grounded. Every single time there's an opportunity to wax like pseudoscientific about anything, it gets reduced to far more, I think, poetic terms for Veronica and subsequently the audience. And I think that, because of that, of course, we can call this movie soft science fiction. It's not hard science fiction.
Yeah.
It's not about the science. It's about the fiction. It's about the characters and their journeys.
Which I much prefer.
But there is something poetic about how he explains all of. He even at the end of that scene, he even says the poetry of the steak. He mentions the poetry of the steak and how that's the thing that he's got to work on, is figuring out how to tell the computer to I guess interpret the flesh, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a different thing entirely. I also think the poetry of the steak is a particularly great band name. So if you're looking for a band name, Poetry of the Steak.
It's a pretty good band name.
It's pretty fucking solid.
It's pretty good. I can see a couple album covers there with that.
It's got to be Screamo.
Yes, yeah. Of course. But yeah, Poetry of the Steak. Yeah, but no, there isn't a lot of technobabble in it, and sometimes I am amazed by how some sci-fi movies are able to make me believe in their science, but they don't talk about it.
Yeah,
they don't talk about it at all.
That's not really the school of good old Michael Crichton, is it? Where he's just like, I'm going to tell you all of the bullshit that I think makes this sound.
That would be the
like
opposite of Michael Crichton. Where yeah, we've got chapters and chapters. Just read the original Jurassic Park. Lost World's a little better about it, but Jurassic Park is pretty dense on the technobabble.
Yeah, it's
pretty much
the book far more so than even the
that's
movie.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's the book. But yeah, I'm not very strongly into hard sci-fi in general. I love sci-fi, but I prefer a stronger focus on characters than on the science, just because I don't like science very much because I'm not good at it. So,
I'm not either.
So it's kind of hard for me to really get into it because I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. So
you're not one of those insufferable I fucking love science people?
No.
They're not that insufferable. I fucking love science too, but let's calm the fuck down. Okay.
Anyways, though, I prefer my stories to be character driven. I prefer basically all of my stories to be character driven. Plot driven second, honestly, for me. I need good characters before I even need good plot. And a lot of people will argue that it should be the other way around. A lot of people argue too that in science fiction and fantasy it is the other way around. That science fiction and fantasy is plot driven, and that literary fiction is character driven. I don't think that's true today.
I don't think that's true. No, I don't think
might
that
have been
holds up.
true during the pulp fiction days, but
Maybe,
it's not true today.
Yeah, the nickel books. You just got a load of books in the mail, some first edition.
Yeah, from Andre Norton.
Some Andre Norton stuff, and they're like. They're first editions, and they're not even hardcover. They're these little paperbacks, and they have the price printed right on the cover, 40 cents. And it's
pretty fantastic.
Yeah, they're great.
But
let's just put a capper on the body horror thing. We got into the origins of body horror, and we didn't really finish it. even with the the origins of body horror going back, at least in film, as far back as 1956's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and probably before that even.
Oh, I'm sure there are examples we didn't.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Touch.
The term itself was not coined until the year this movie came out.
For real?
I don't know if it had anything to do with this movie, but there was a body horror themed issue of the film journal Screen that comes out of the University of Glasgow. And they had the theme of the journal that issue was body horror. It's the first time the term was coined, and they had several essays, several writings on the topic. I would be shocked if this movie or the other works or David Cronenberg himself was not mentioned a lot in the journal, but yeah, I think that's really interesting that this.
Well, and we can.
This is perhaps the defining work of David Cronenberg's career.
You think so?
This or Videodrome? I think this though, because I think popularly this is probably
more people know this.
Yeah, so I would say that this is probably the defining
my
work of
freshmen
Cronenberg's career.
In my comp classes, none of them knew it. However, had never heard of it.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Are we old? Is that what this feels
Yeah,
like?
every comp class where the ones that know that I do a podcast was asking me what I was doing this week, and I told them, they're like, I don't know that movie. But I wanted to mention though a couple other pretty famous body horror directors and movies.
Yeah.
So like movies that stick out to me as pretty good examples of body horror, not that they're necessarily good movies, but just examples of body horror. Akira, I think, is a great one.
Akira is a really great one.
Taking it into animation.
Yes, absolutely. Which we covered on the podcast. Go back through the archives and listen to the episode.
J-horror gets into body horror a lot. That's a pretty common theme in J-horror.
Yes, but with specific things.
Yes, very, very different than Western body horror.
They're really bothered, like in J-horror, it feels like they're really bothered by hair.
Yes, they are, very much
really
so. But
hate
that goes
hair.
back to, well, this would be a whole nother discussion, but it goes back to fears from particular characters in Japanese mythology and literature, which have particular traits with their hair, and so that's where that stuff comes from. But that's a discussion for another podcast episode. But like an example from J-horror would be Audition, right?
Yep.
That's a super body horror. It's kind of a
very much
torture-y movie. Torture-y movies get body horror.
I think torture porn
kind of melds.
I think torture porn might be even a subgenre
of
the
body
subgenre
horror.
that is.
Yeah.
So it's like horror,
Body
body
horror,
torture porn.
porn.
It's like
Yeah.
its own thing.
The Human Centipede is an extremely obvious example of that. I
yeah.
hate that movie, but
Because it doesn't have anything else to hang those visuals on. It doesn't have anything else to hang that story on. It doesn't have characters.
all it is just we're gonna sew asses to mouths, and it's really gross, and that
like,
sucks.
Look how gross this is.
And believe me, I love things that are gross for the sake of being gross.
I can get behind that.
But I need a
so
little,
to speak.
just something. Just give me something.
That was a bad choice of words, wasn't it? I can get behind that and get sewed to it.
Oh, disgusting.
Sewn. Past participle.
Reanimator, Slither. We already said Starry Eyes. Cabin in the Woods. That's a good. Or not Cabin in the Woods. Cabin Fever.
Oh yeah, Cabin Fever.
That's a good one.
Eli Roth's movies. Yeah, Hostel. Like those.
Teeth.
Yes, Teeth is a very good example. Actually, if you haven't seen Teeth, I remember really enjoying that.
I
Seek that
remember
out.
pretty much enjoying that. I feel like we didn't love it though. It's been a long time.
Yeah. It didn't stay with me.
No.
But I remember
Starry
liking
Eyes
it.
stayed with me.
Oh, it stayed with me.
It's been like a year and it still stayed with me.
Yeah, there's some visuals in that movie that I just can't shake.
Yeah. You were gonna say some directors.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, of course you've got, Cronenberg is right there at the top of the list. Then you've got people like Stuart Gordon, who made Reanimator, which I think is a great movie that could fit very easily into this month of
We're very
sci-fi
much
horror
fans
films.
of Reanimator.
Very much fans of I have to be honest, I'm a fan of the whole series. I think the second movie is not as strong. I think the third movie is surprisingly strong in that series. And then you've got people like Lloyd Kaufman, who's been doing body horror forever with the Trauma movies. All the Toxic Avenger movies and stuff like that. All of them are just gross to a degree, and they all have to. It's all gross, and it all has to do with like the body. It's all it's all body and body humor. You know what I mean?
Yes, sex humor. Yes, got it. I got the joke.
Lewd and rude, that kind of stuff. He's like the John Waters of like, I don't know, B horror movies. If that makes sense to somebody.
It's not me.
Frank Henenlotter. I think Frank Henenlotter is a great example. He's the guy who made Brain Damage and Basket Case. Brain Damage being, I think, his strongest work. Also probably his weirdest work. There's a great scene in that movie where a guy just bleeds out of his ear for like it's got to be like 20 seconds of film time,
man,
where it just sprays like a pressure hose out of his ear. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Oh no, we're missing a scene that I love, where Jeff Goldblum is half naked and just does a bunch of exercises silently.
This is this moment here, despite the great score by Howard Shore that is in the rest of the movie, this moment, this scene has no music or dialogue. Mm-hmm. This action speaks for itself.
Oh my God, look at those hairy pits. Man.
He is...
That stunt double is pretty believable too. They do a good job of framing these shots so that it's
pretty seamless.
Yeah, it is really seamless. He physically looks a lot like him.
That's true. And I mean, Goldblum is he's cut from marble.
I love him walking on the ceiling when he does these flips.
Let's see. What have I missed? I've been missing a bunch of notes that I wanted to go over.
Goldblum is more in shape than the stunt double.
After the teleportation, the second teleportation of the baboon, the successful one, Veronica tells Seth that he'll never have to be car sick again, to which Seth says, or air sick, or e-sick, or e-sick, that's not a word, seasick. In The Right Stuff in 1983, Jeff Goldblum played a man who got seasick, and in Independence Day, if you remember, he played a man who got airsick. Unfortunately, I think this is less of a coincidence and more of a case of Goldblum being somewhat typecast as a stereotypically neurotic or hypochondriac Jew.
Oh no!
Yes,
Did you just say it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what that is.
That's unfortunate.
I think it's disgusting and terrible.
And you pointed it out, and I'd never thought of it before, and it's really unfortunate now that you say it out loud.
It's true. Like, you watch this movie, and he's supposed to be brilliant in this movie, but there's also that little element of like
being kind of a neurotic hypochondriac,
and
right?
It's also they're buying stuff from Eric Cartman. That hat reminds me of Cartman for some reason. Sorry. But yeah, like I don't think it's any coincidence that it's like Jeff Goldblum played a character who got car sick and then in another movie seasick and air sick. That's such a coincidence. It's like, no, that's stereotyping.
Yeah.
That's generalizing. Yeah. And it's fucking gross. So
no, it's the obvious stereotype from like what is not Family Guy. The neighbors that they have, right? Yeah, that's what they're going for. That's really unfortunate.
Mort Goldman, I think his name is. Mm-hmm.
Really unfortunate. I've never thought of that till you pointed it out, but now that you say it, I'm going to see it everywhere. You're ruining my perception of Goldblum in the movies. Please stop it.
I'm sorry. Here's one of the things that that I think that this movie could do without. I love this movie. I do. I'm gonna say it full stop. This movie is a masterpiece. I think this movie is a masterpiece. I still think that there's some things in this movie that, although they end up working, I think they work in the movie ultimately. The love plot, the love triangle, it doesn't work for me. Like, it's not just that I don't like Stathis. I think that's what ultimately kind of makes his plot thread work at all is that you don't like him.
Yeah.
But I think that
Oh my gosh, I love him getting crazy here.
it's a great performance.
Yeah, the nonstop talking. Goldblum pulls off this nonstop talking thing so well. So well.
Well, here's the thing. Few actors can go from the slow, thoughtful cadence of Goldblum's earlier performance in this movie and the thing that he's really known for to this kind of manic character he's become now without seeming like entirely different characters. But I think it's one of the benefits of his style, of his style. The way he speaks and the way he performs, and people. We said this before in the Jurassic Park podcast. People give him a hard time, and they say that he plays one character, that he's just Jeff Goldblum in every movie. And I can't necessarily disagree with that, but I have to say I like that character enough that I'll keep coming back to see it.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with him being. I've said that from the beginning. He's Jeff Goldblum in every movie, but I'm okay with that. So we're fine on those terms. Him here. This is the point when I start to get uncomfortable with Goldblum in this movie. Where he's just fucking like nonstop, right?
Yes.
And he's starting to look kind of gross too.
This isn't sexy.
No. This is no longer.
Sexy.
The last sexy moment was when he was working out.
When he's working out and he's doing the parallel bars and all that.
That's the last sexy moment where you're like, oh, that's pretty.
He's starting to break out. His face has got these weird
and he's
marks
just
on it.
Sex crazed now. Yeah, and it feels animalistic now. Whereas like. Oh my God, scientist Jeff Goldblum before he starts becoming Brundlefly, man, how could any girl, or guy not fall for him at the beginning of this movie? Because he's just so incredibly charming by being kind of awkward, like in that perfect way. Oh God, Jeff Goldblum. These rusty scissors cutting the
perfect,
hairs.
Right? It's like that scene at the end of Antichrist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you know the scene. Then congratulations. You're part of a club that can never unsee.
I was reading some weird thread online somewhere where some guy was talking about people saying that
that's fucking body horror, by the way.
Oh God,
that's
yeah.
Actually, we say that we can't think of good body horror from the last few years or whatever, and I guess Antichrist is a little bit older. I love Antichrist.
I know you do.
I know you don't care for that movie.
It's not that I don't care for it. You just got my expectations so high for it, and then I watched it, and I was like,
I'm sorry. It was kind of I don't know. First time I saw it was the right time, right place. Lars von Trier, man, that guy's fucking nuts.
Anyways, I was on some thread though somewhere, and the conversation had devolved into people talking about like complaining about people who are like, I never get disgusted by anything in movies. I'm totally desensitized. I can watch anything. I can watch Cannibal Holocaust, whatever, right? And so like it was people talking about that, and then some guy talks about how he just throws in there that his coworker or his neighbor or somebody, like a mom's friend or something like that.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. Drink deep or taste not the plasma spring. Now he's speaking in like lyrics to a hardcore song.
Deep penetrating dive into the plasma pool.
That line, drink deep or taste not the plasma spring, is actually a reference to a famous quote from Alexander Pope's An Essay on Criticism. Mm-hmm. The full quote is, a little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring. Their shallow draughts intoxicate the brain, or drafts intoxicate the brain, and drinking largely sobers us again. And at the end of that scene where he walks away and he's shouting like, drink deep or taste not the plasma spring, and he walks away, the look on Veronica's face is just like, I have the fucking worst luck with men.
What have I gotten myself into?
What the fuck is this?
What in the hell? I just cut these weird hairs off his back, and this is where we stand. Okay. Let me finish the story that I was going to say. All the story is just that the guy, now it's not that important. All it was that the guy suggested to somebody's mom who was like looking for a movie for her daughter and her friends at their slumber party to watch. And he was like, oh yeah, you should rent this movie Antichrist. It's really scary.
Oh my God.
And she did.
That's amazing.
And I'm just picturing that slumber party, those girls putting that movie on, and like at what point they get into the movie and they're
you know
like,
what?
wait a minute.
I'm going to be honest. I can't imagine them getting past the first scene, which is like high contrast, monochrome, super slow motion, full penetration sex scene with this like it's a classical song. I don't think it's even score. Like it's a classical song, watching this baby like approach a window fall out of it into the snow. Like at that point you're either on board or you're not. I can't imagine a bunch of like high school girls being like, yeah, let's watch this.
Let's keep going.
This is interesting. Like it's just I really enjoy the motif of, like penetration, like sexual penetration and emotional penetration. Right? Sorry.
That's pretty good.
This scene right here, where Brundlefly, not yet Brundlefly, Seth Brundle,
becoming Brundlefly.
He breaks this guy's arm.
Oh, and it's
God, it's fucking amazing. A compound fracture. And I like how he lifts his hand up when he's done. He's just like, I wasn't cheating. Look at my hand. It's right here.
Look.
I'm just that much of a badass. If you've never seen the movie Over the Top, starring Sylvester Stallone, about an arm wrestling trucker, don't bother.
Oh, okay, good.
Just watch this scene.
And then you get the whole movie?
It'll deliver everything that movie has to offer and more.
Okay.
Just from this one scene.
Okay, good.
I also really like the look that he's supposed to be an asshole now because he's being taken over by the Fly, which I get this. But the girl that he's picked up, he says something about if I win, I get the girl, right? And she's like, do I look like a hooker to you? And he's just like,
I mean,
you kind of do. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, all right, Brundlefly.
Okay, Brundlefly. 1 point for Brundlefly.
He walks in and orders a scotch or something like that, which I thought was a little weird. I thought he should have ordered like a cocktail that has
something really sweet. Yeah, some
really
girly
sweet.
Drink.
Something like a Sex on the Beach or something that you wouldn't normally see.
A guy like him order.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. It should have been something. You're totally right. It should have been something really, really sweet. But that was a mistake.
This
right
is
there,
where like
oversight.
the sexual component of the movie comes in, and I think it really only elevates all of the body horror stuff. Obviously, I think that Seth trying to force not only Veronica but this girl that he's picked up, he eventually tries to talk them into or force them to go through the portal. It's entirely analogous to me to similar situations in relationships where one partner is not prepared or willing for some step or action that the other partner is wanting to do. Anything like that. I think it's totally analogous to that, and I think that makes that really interesting. It makes the sexual component not just a sexual component, but also a story about this relationship. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about something, characterization that we've kind of passed the point of this now, but it was something that came up in my notes a few times, which is that, so at the beginning of the movie, Gina Davis, is kind of shitty. Like, she's kind of a jerk right at the beginning of the movie. Her not really caring about listening to him, not believing him, and then even when she does, just using it for selfish gain and like not being a good person. She slowly becomes a better person, but for a large portion of this movie, I don't trust her. There's a large portion of the movie where I'm just like, I still feel like, and this is all before he starts to become Fly, but I still feel like she's in it. She's in the relationship that she's using him for, not just, well, I think we move past the story because she sees something even better than the story for her, right, which is that he's going to be famous and really rich.
That's an interesting thing because I think that to me, she is an incredibly sympathetic character. I think so much so that I've even got a note here where I state pretty assuredly that Seth Brundle is not even the main character of this movie.
That she is? I would believe that.
I feel like she's really the main character of this movie because, he may be the subject of the movie, and I think he is obviously the subject of the movie because it is indeed called The Fly. But I think that Veronica is the center point for this.
No, I think that's totally true.
We mostly see his transformation. Mostly we see it from her perspective. We're grounded to her perspective. We're grounded to her level of intelligence. That's why the movie doesn't have, we've already talked about this, the technobabble.
It doesn't have the technobabble because it's from her perspective, not his perspective.
It all gets reduced down to like, more poetic things, not quite prosaic, but poetic things that, he says to her in order to explain all of these very complicated ideas.
Right.
And not only that, but she is at the center. She's at the end of one relationship and the beginning of another. She's in a transition period, just like this, this man, Seth Brundle. So I feel like because we see her at the center of this, all of this, and she's got all of the stuff with Stathis on one side and she's got all the stuff with Brundle on the other side, I feel that situates her in a place where it's hard to deny that she is the protagonist of the movie, that she is pushing everything forward. At least she is pushing forward how the audience perceives all of the things that's happening.
I don't doubt that whatsoever. I totally agree that she's the protagonist of the story. However, that doesn't mean that she can be a sympathetic character and still be a character that I don't trust. And that's how I feel about her for up until the point in the movie when he is in dire straits, like right now, the fact that she still cares, and especially later when he's like really disgusting and despairing and she's still hanging on and still trying to help him. Obviously by then there's a lot of trust, but early on in the movie, I feel like she's establishing this relationship with him. First, she's obviously establishing it to get the story. And then to get the larger story where she's, going to videotape it and stuff. But then I think even when she moves past that, because we see the whole scene where like she goes and tells her ex-boyfriend, she's not doing this now, whatever, like she's serious about him and she's not going to betray him and whatever, right? Even when we get to that point, I know we're supposed to be believing in her, but even when she's like, when she tells him they should go on a holiday, right? And she's like, we should go somewhere and just go away, the two of us. I'm still thinking to myself, you sure have gotten yourself into a position with a guy who's about to become really famous and successful and probably extremely rich. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd back out of that either.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
So I felt like it was definitely still selfishly motivated at the beginning of the story.
Well, speaking of Veronica, the famous tagline in the movie, she's already said it, be afraid, be very afraid. It originated as dialogue spoken by her in this movie, but I really don't like her delivery of the line. It feels, maybe it's just my perception, maybe it's just me, it probably is. I feel like it's designed to be the tagline and not like it organically became the tagline by virtue of a great performance or a great delivery or the fact that it's a great line. Like, I don't think it's a particularly strong line on its own. It feels pretty hokey, just to be honest.
Yeah.
And I don't think that her delivery of it is particularly strong either. I feel like it was designed to be the tagline of this movie, which I don't care for it.
Oh my God. Now, this is a beautiful example of body horror right here where he squeezes off his nails and then pus squirts out of them.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh my God. Oh, it's so good and awful. Peeling off fingernails is just terrible.
Of all of the crazy fucked up stuff in this movie, there's these little quiet moments of him doing this are just...
Every time I watch it.
I mean, do you think that this is the best example of Cronenberg's body horror?
Probably, yeah, because it's a movie that's completely about the body changing. So,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of his other movies deal with that as like a theme throughout, but like that's the whole point of this movie is this body changing. I mean, the obvious literary reference for this movie, do you know it, right? The like very clear one.
Kafka's Metamorphosis.
Right, of course. Yeah. So the obvious literary reference is Metamorphosis, because not just because of the super, right in your face outward connection, which is it's about a man who turns into a giant bug. But it's also because of the themes in the movie, because it's a movie about transformation It's a movie about becoming the person that you didn't want to be, and becoming a burden on those around you because of what you've become. In the Metamorphosis, it's just a salesman. What's his name? Gregor. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's just a salesman who wakes up and turns into a bug, and his family confines him to his bedroom, and he keeps escaping until finally he's confined to his bedroom and he just dies there. And they're pretty happy about it because he's become a burden on them and they are disgusted by him.
I think the computer stuff that we're seeing right now holds up slightly better than The Thing.
The computer stuff? Oh, actually, I've thought that too. That was one of my notes too, is that I think that the computer stuff does look better.
I think it does look better. I don't know what it
is.
is.
There is something, though, maybe here at the end after this sequence where like the computer gives him some information that he didn't ask for or something like that. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, why do you...
Well, I mean, here's the thing. This whole thing that he does right here.
Oh, this is the stuff I'm talking about.
Asking a computer a direct question and getting a direct answer just doesn't seem like, even in the age of Siri, it doesn't really seem realistic for a scientist to be approaching his work that way. You know?
Because he wouldn't need a whole sentence to get across, what he was trying to ask. He would just be typing in elements and seeing if they connected or whatever. What if the first element was if the primary element was Brundle, what is the secondary element or whatever, right? Like, he doesn't need to ask full question. He's just going to type in secondary element or something.
Right. Yeah. That's all he needs to do is there needs to be a column that says primary element, Brundle, result, whatever, and he has the computer figure out what the secondary element was.
Right. Yeah. But typing out full questions and asking.
You can portray that visually without like having him go, computer, what is the answer to my question? Well, the answer to your question.
And by the way, guys, I mean, Siri, she's still just not cutting it.
Pretty dumb. She's pretty dumb. Let's just put she's pretty dumb. You were talking about this.
Siri is pretty much only good when you're drunk and you just keep asking questions, trying to figure out like personal questions and stuff, trying to figure out what she'll respond to that'll make you laugh.
You touched on, the about this movie being about the body and the degradation of the body and how it falls apart. And a lot of people saw this movie when it came out. A lot of people saw it, and it's definitely because of the time. A lot of people saw this movie as a metaphor for AIDS.
Okay.
When it came out.
Okay.
And Cronenberg was surprised by this. He didn't actually think that the movie said that. He felt that the movie was more about like disease, just generally disease, but mostly about the aging process, about what happens when the body ages.
That's a really morbid picture of growing old.
It is, and for a man
and
who's...
what about all the sexual themes and stuff then? I mean, guys get hornier as they get older?
It's not rock solid. Let me just say that. For a man who's not young anymore, I wonder what Cronenberg, how he would reevaluate this movie now. If it was
now
really
that he has aged, right?
If it's really about aging, I wonder what he has to say about, what he was trying to say.
You're kind of infallible when you're young, right? But then you get old and you're like, maybe I don't want to say that aging is like your ears falling off and stuff.
Yeah, this scene right here.
Yeah, this is the stage here, getting to this point. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love the stuff where like his ears are falling off and all of that. I think that's really fun, but I'm just not. I don't know. I don't know what they could have done differently to make it better, but I'm just not into the look of the face and stuff here.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's okay. I think the one I really don't like is just the ending final version.
You don't like the design of the fly?
No, and I like the fly itself when he like sheds his skin and then turns into the actual fly. But I'm just not like the one before it. Like I said, he kind of looks like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and here he just looks like a zombie.
Huh. That's really strange that you say that. I mean, because you know that the design of the fly, the final design of the fly. I don't know who. Well, actually, no, I do know who ended up doing it finally. The guy. But there was a design for the fly submitted for this movie by the guy who did all the special effects in The Thing.
Oh, really?
Who did all the effects in The Thing? What was his name? Because I keep forgetting.
You said it earlier.
No, I said Wallace. Wallace was the guy who did the stuff in this movie. I can't remember. It wasn't Rick Baker did the dog effect, but he didn't want to take away from the work of what's his face.
Anyways, go on though.
Rob Bottin, that's his name. Jesus, God, that was terrible. But yeah, Wallace, who did all the effects in this movie, his design for the fly ended up winning over Rob Bottin, who had done amazing work on the fly just a few years before this.
Yeah.
I would really like to see what Rob Bottin submitted.
I would too. And I'm not curious. when I say I don't like it, I don't mean I don't like it, because I do like it. I do
really, really love how they use the famous line from the original film from 1958.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's 58. Vincent Price, The Fly.
Yes, it is 58.
Also, strangely, this is the second movie in a row that we've done that is a remake of a movie that was made in the 50s that was based on a short story. Because
But that's just science fiction. That's just because
I guess that's
the
true.
answer is because science fiction, because that's when, science fiction was ramping up, and then the 80s was when we started deciding to make science fiction movies like mad. Well, I mean, we were making science fiction movies before, but there was a resurgence in the 80s.
But anyway, like when his ear falls off and he says, "I'm scared," and all this kind of stuff, and they hold each other and they're crying, and he says, "Help me." Mm-hmm. Like it's such a different moment than how it is in the original movie that you miss it if you don't think about it. But that's exactly what that's supposed to be, as a nod to the original movie, where at the end of the film, you've got this little fly with the human's head inside a spider web, and the spider's slowly approaching, and he says, "Help me, help me, help me," and cut to credits, and you're like, "Oh my God, what a horrifying ending. Dun, dun, dun." Yeah. It's that kind of thing. But in this movie, it's like, my body's falling apart and I'm going to die and I'm scared. Help me.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck.
Yeah, but what I was saying, though, is that it's not that saying I don't like the stuff in this movie is a little too strong, because it's not that I don't like the way he looks. It's just I have really high standards for when it comes to practical effects and gore design, and especially when it comes to body horror and stuff. And after coming out of a movie like The Thing, where it was so creative, I feel like just making him kind of look like a zombie and just making him kind of look like, and they do it very well. Like, he's a zombie whose face looks kind of weird, and like his shirt is all weepy and messed up and whatever. And then like the later version of him where he's got like the bodysuit on and stuff, like all of that going on. I don't know. I just, like I said, I feel like it could be more creative. They could have done something weirder, more upsetting.
Well, they do stuff kind of weird. I mean, we didn't see the scene because it was actually cut out of the movie, but there is a pretty famous deleted scene where after he figures out what's happened to him, that he has been fused with the fly at the molecular genetic level, right? That he tries to, in an attempt to figure out how to fix himself, he the baboon that has mysteriously disappeared from this movie. Yes. Well, it actually ends up going somewhere. He fuses that with a cat. Oh. And creates a terrible creature that comes out screaming and in pain. This cat baboon.
Oh man, I need to see that.
That he beats to death with a lead pipe.
Awesome.
And it's awesome and terrible. But there, apparently, when they tested that, audiences said, "Yeah, after you beat any kind of animal to death with a lead pipe, I don't care if it's grotesque. We just don't care about you anymore. We don't care about your story because you're a piece of shit. Because you did this to an animal and then you beat it to death for what you did to this animal. So fuck you."
Okay, I mean, I can get behind that. I can understand that, but I still want to see Cat Baboon.
Well, I mean, you can see it. It's out there. I
Yeah.
watched it on YouTube like a couple nights ago.
Oh my God, his performance is so great though here, where he starts like twitching and stuff while he talks.
Yeah.
The way he talks and he twitches and all that kind of stuff. It's really fantastic.
So, and here's another amazing thing to me. This the vomit drop, which we get to see earlier in the scene before this. He takes a piece of food and he throws up on it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's disgusting." And he's forgotten how disgusting what he's doing is, and she reacts horribly. And we see it the first time we see it, and we're like, "Oh my God, what did he just do?"
But we don't see him slurp it up, which is what Scumbag is watching now.
We don't see him slurp it up, but I think that's an interesting thing, is that we've already seen him do this terrible thing, and then we watch another character react to him doing the same thing, except we don't see him slurp it up, to be fair. But his reaction to him doing it is just like, oh, how gross and terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's like it brings us right back to that. We don't have to see it again. We're just like, yeah, it's gross,
we're watching the reaction. Yeah. But however, that was a moment where I was like, oh, we kind of pulled back on that. Like, we pulled back a little bit, and we didn't see him slurp up his vomit.
We've missed some stuff. Stathis earlier referred to Typhoid Mary, which, of course, is a reference to Mary Mallon, who is the first person in the U.S. to be identified as an asymptomatic carrier of the pathogen associated with typhoid fever.
Yes.
She infected some 50-something people.
51.
Over the course of her career. She was a cook. And 3 of those 51 people died.
Yeah, and it was like the case was that she wasn't showing symptoms, like obviously asymptomatic. Right. And so she was going to work for these families, and she just kept moving from family to family, and everyone in all the houses she was in just kept getting sick. She died, though, in isolation because they kept for 30 years.
Her, yeah.
They quarantined her for 30 years.
Let's be real. They imprisoned her for 30 years.
Yeah.
I think that even though the AIDS metaphor is, according to the filmmaker, not something that's present because he wasn't thinking about it, but I do think that what Veronica is going through with wanting to stay by Brundle's side, it falls very much in line with the AIDS metaphor and the many relationships that were ravaged, especially in the 80s, by the disease. AIDS as a type of sexually transmitted disease has kind of these ideas of relationships and sex kind of built right into it that I feel fit into this film because of its also ideas about, sex and the body and the degradation of the body and all of that kind of stuff. So I feel that is actually a pretty apt metaphor, even though the director, who's actually in this scene right now, whether or not you know
Is he?
Yes,
the doctor,
the obstetrician right here with the glasses on. That's Mr. David Cronenberg.
Oh, fantastic!
This might be my number 1 movie dream sequence of all time.
Yeah, really?
This one right here, yeah. But after watching some of his early films, Martin Scorsese asked to meet David Cronenberg, and when he met him, he told him that he looked like a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon. And Cronenberg's like, okay, I think I'll give myself a cameo as a doctor. So he did. Oh my God, that's so great. The
larva,
maggot,
yeah.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, it is terrible.
Larva baby.
Awful.
But
and now this movie has changed, and now
Yes.
this movie is going to talk about abortion.
Yes, now we've got brilliantly woven ideas of pregnancy fears and a sexual history with a person having a terminal illness of questionable communicability. Like, I think all of that works really well. I think that I'll even make a point later if I remember to about how this movie, if made again or if made today, could say even more about that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Made today, it definitely would say different things. At least would say more on the same topic, if not some different things too. But I mean, I love where this movie is going to go with it, where it just solely becomes about her. Like, there are some scenes where she's screaming and it's all these male characters who are telling her to stop having the abortion. Like, there are multiple male characters. The doctor kind of tries to talk her out of it. Her ex-boyfriend kind of tries to talk her out of it. Brundle physically kidnaps her and takes her away so she won't have an abortion.
Well, I mean, not only that stuff I think is really great too, but go as far as just the diseased person is concerned, if we're just talking about this, the subject, if you will, a Brundlefly, I think we can safely call him Brundlefly at this point.
Brundlefly.
Even the concept of a diseased person having ups and downs is represented in this film, and it's complemented by the totally realistic exhaustion and the exasperation felt by loved ones who feel like they're simply kind of on this terrible roller coaster with no control of the situation. Because she comes to see him one day and he's literally falling apart in front of her, crying, saying he's scared, he's gonna die, he needs help, he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know who to call, and what can he do? Like, this is a totally unique experience. It's terrifying. And then she comes in the next day and he's climbing on the walls and he's like, look what I can do, look at this other thing I can do. And she's just like, I can't handle this.
I can't
come
handle
in
the
one
back and
day and
forth.
it's the end of the world, and I come in the next and it's a whole new world. So it's oh, and the rotating room.
Yes.
Welcome back to Popcorn Poops.
Welcome back to Popcorn
Poops. Pumpkin Poops, actually.
Pumpkin Poops. We always have a place for you, rotating room, in our horror movies.
We do. I guess the only other time we've seen it in a movie on Popcorn Poops was Poltergeist.
Have we not done Nightmare yet?
Oh, we did, but that wasn't it was a rotating room, but I don't think they rotated it in the movie because it got stuck upside down or something was broken on it.
No, because she's on the ceiling rolling around when the blood's like spurting out of the bed.
Oh, I guess that's right. You're right. This is the third time then. This is the third rotating room that we're going to get all the rotating room movies.
All the way rotating room.
This
This is what I'm talking about here. It's not that it sucks, and like every time I look at it, I'm like, how can I say anything bad about it? Because it does look good. I don't know. I just want something crazier. I just want the thing.
Well,
that's what I want.
You know,
I want the thing.
It doesn't really change the design all that much, but after the cat baboon scene where he beats the terrible nightmare creature to death. He crawls out onto the roof of his little flat here and ends up falling off the building.
Oh, good.
And onto not like a dumpster. He falls onto like a lower outcropping or something like that, where an insect arm protrudes out of his
Oh, that's fantastic.
chest,
man.
and he freaks out and grabs it and amputates it by chewing it off.
That's really awesome.
Yes, that's also...
See, like, this stuff should have totally made the movie.
Okay, of all of the crazy fucked up shit they do in this movie, I watched that scene the other night, the scene where he amputates his own insect arm by chewing it off.
Right.
And even I was like, too much. It's a little too much.
No way. Impossible.
Let's show some restraint.
No way. There's no reason for restraint. So, God, I love the way she acts, right? Her acting in this scene is...
I have to say something because her reaction, crying, saying, I don't know what you're trying to say. I just imagine that's a normal reaction to a conversation with Jeff Goldblum. Where he's like, and I, when I'm thinking about, the poetry of the steak and the, drink deep. Taste not
We got it.
The plasma.
We got it.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you have a conversation with Jeff Goldblum.
That was actually just an outtake.
You just start crying.
That they left in the movie because she's just like, I don't know what you're trying to say to me right
now. But regardless of whether or not, she does very well with it. So.
I did want to mention something. We mentioned Kafka earlier, and I just want to mention this. I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man and loved it, but now the dream is over and the insect is away. Also, a reference to Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. Yeah,
my favorite all-time reference to Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis is in the Metamorphosis rock opera.
Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka.
Yeah, that's the best one. That's one of those stories that I was forced to read in high school or something and has come up so many times in my life.
I mean, it really is as seminal. Like you read it in, and you're just freshman college or something like that. Maybe
it was high school.
Well, yeah, you took AP classes. But you read it for the first time and you're just like, is this really that important?
This is really,
it turns into a bug. It turns into a cockroach. Right? Come on.
Right.
But it really is.
But it is. People talk about it all the time. It just comes back again and again and again. Anyways, one of our listeners, I think it was Joachim, asked what our favorite Cronenberg movies were. If this was our favorite.
He asked if this was our favorite. And when we did the Dead Zone podcast, I said that the Dead Zone was my favorite David Cronenberg movie. And I don't know if that's changed. Maybe it hasn't. I love the Dead Zone. I think it might some days might be my favorite David Cronenberg movie, but I just love so many of his movies that it's hard to say that any one of them. I feel like picking a movie that David Cronenberg, being at the height of his Cronenberginess, it's got to be The Fly or Videodrome. Got to be. I don't like Naked Lunch as much as a lot of people. It's not quite up there for me. It's like between like of his body horror stuff, the really gross stuff. I really love Scanners too, but it's really got to be between The Fly and Videodrome. Now, if you're talking about his other stuff that's like not quite what he's known for, Eastern Promises is wonderful. I would say Eastern Promises is right up there next to the Dead Zone. I feel like between A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, if David Cronenberg wanted to continue making crime movies, he would give Scorsese a run for his fucking money. I'm not even kidding. Full stop. You know, I'm serious. Like he's just
the second time you said full stop in this episode.
This episode?
Yeah.
Have I? Well, full stop 2 times.
3 times now.
3 times. That's I guess that's 3 periods now. That's 3 ellipses. So now I've just created a pause. Good for me.
How'd this turn into a literary technical discussion?
Brundlefly's visit to the hospital is the most B movie thing in this movie.
Oh yeah, it's totally trauma.
Like him,
it's trauma all the way. Him like bursting through,
like
right?
him bursting through the window and
it's
him
Toxic Avenger.
hopping over rooftops and shit like that, like with the rubber suit and stuff. It's like the suit's not meant to be seen in that.
That's what I'm talking about. Like there are just some images from this for me where I'm not buying the costume and the feel to the end Brundlefly here. I guess that's how it feels. It feels kind of trauma-y to me. It feels a little Toxic Avenger.
I guess he does kind of. I mean, the Toxic Avenger stuff doesn't look anywhere as good.
Oh
as this.
no,
it
not at all.
Not even close.
No, not even a little bit. But that's the feeling where it's just like, oh, it's really gross. You know. You didn't ask my favorite Cronenberg movie.
What is your favorite Cronenberg movie?
Don't you know it?
Oh, let me think. I bet it is. Oh, Jesus.
After we watched it many years ago.
It's The Brood.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, that's a great choice.
Yeah, The Brood is my favorite one.
The Brood is so fucking good.
That's the only Cronenberg movie that sincerely kind of creeped. Like, a body horror creeps me out in a different way, but The Brood kind of just creeped me out, where I was just like, this is really weird and I'm upset by it. Oh, by the way, best Cronenberg reference of all time. We gave the best Franz Kafka reference of all time.
Oh, the best Cronenberg reference, hands down, Rick and Morty.
Oh yeah, you got it.
Rick and Morty.
That's why we're married.
The Cronenberg episode is just holy shit.
Where it's just like we wound up on the Cronenberg planet, and like just these disgusting mutated creatures all over the place.
It's pretty amazing. Okay, so let's talk about abortion.
Yeah, let's talk about abortion. I love the stuff here where she just starts screaming. No, I love the stuff here where she just starts screaming, "It's my body."
It's I
don't want it in my body. Yeah, yes. Sorry. I don't want it in my body.
That little moment, like that alone is such a strong argument for legal abortion, where, I mean, she says it straight out. She says, I don't want it in my body. Like,
and if you don't do it, then I'm going to.
And that's the other thing, is she follows up on that. She says, I don't want it in my body. I don't want it in my body. She repeats it herself, and she says, and if you don't do it, I will.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean,
and that's where we get to, which is what's happened to women again and again and again throughout history, is that you take away safe measures and then it becomes unsafe. It's not like it's going to stop. It didn't stop back in the day when they killed people for it. So I'm pretty sure it's not going to stop today because you make it illegal.
Right. I think here's the thing that I think, not that I'm saying that this movie needs to be remade. because it doesn't need, nothing needs to be remade. I don't get up in arms about remakes. This is a remake. The Thing is also a remake, and they're both brilliant movies. You know, I'm not one of those guys that's like, please, you can't just keep remaking everything. It's whatever. Shit gets remade. We retell
Oh my
stories.
God, him spraying the acid stuff in his hand melting.
It's great. That melting hand effect was created by sculpting the mutilated hand, then building up an intact hand on top of it out of gelatin. And then the gelatin was melted using stage lights and a hairdryer and filmed at a low speed and then sped back up.
That is fantastic.
Chris Wallace essentially recreated the same effect that he had used earlier for Toth's melting face in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Wonderful. And
Same
you can
dude.
totally see it.
tell.
Yeah. You can totally tell.
But what I was saying is that if this movie were to be remade or made today, the one thing that I think could be added to this movie in support of the abortion themes is a last-ditch effort by Brundle to harness the stem cells of his unborn child to cure himself. Because I feel like this movie is just like a hop, skip, and a jump away from that with his attempt to like he's about to try to fuse with Veronica and the baby.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a movie or in a time period like today where we're more knowledgeable about, you know, the science of stem cells and things like that, and just the storyline of an unborn baby being in here and talking about abortion, all of these issues and the things surrounding these issues that we talk about today in our political sphere, I think would just kind of enhance those ideas in this movie.
I see what you're saying. I could go for that.
So we're here right close to the very end of this pretty tragic movie. It ends up being a tragedy.
Oh yeah,
where
absolutely.
everyone needs both physical and mental therapy, probably.
For the rest of their life.
Poor Stathis is going to need a couple of prosthetic limbs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because Jesus.
Yep. I love that it's so painful that he passes out. Like there's no like writhing and laying there. He just goes into shock and then passes out as his ankle is being disintegrated.
Yeah. You know, there were happy endings filmed for this movie. Did you know
Really?
that? Mm-hmm.
That's surprising.
There were a couple of happy endings. There were, several versions of the happier ending were shot but ultimately never used. 2 were filmed in which Veronica has another dream of her unborn child, this time as a baby with beautiful butterfly wings. And she wakes up in both and is revealed to still be pregnant in one while her pregnancy is left open in the other. Another 2 versions feature her having an unseen nightmare and being comforted by Stathis, who in one version states the baby is his, and in the other that it is dead. Then apparently Jeff Goldblum was angry that they filmed the Stathis endings, like the happy endings with Stathis, as he felt like Veronica ending up with Stathis undermined the tragedy of the movie, which I absolutely agree with.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, they just decided that once Brundlefly dies and everyone's crying and broken forever, that's when the credits should roll. And I think that's the perfect point.
It works.
It's like once your hero is dead, your movie is over. Actually, someone actually said that. Who was it? Stuart Kornfeld, who's a producer. He said, once your hero is dead, your movie is over. Yes.
Yes.
I think that's
true.
pretty much true.
Yeah, no, I think the ending to this is just fine. I mean, it's awful. And it's one of the reasons why I don't come back to this movie so much. And it's not because it's not a great movie, because it is a great movie, but I don't come back to it very much because at the end, like, I just have this horrible feeling, you know, like we end the movie on such a high note of tragedy that it's just, you don't get that final girl, right? Like you don't get that final character where somebody survives. There's some glimmer of hope. There's something, right? There's none of that. It's just this is the end and everyone is broken forever if they're alive. Mm-hmm. Physically and mentally broken forever.
I want to ask, before this is over, have you seen the original?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Yes, I have. A long time ago. But
now, I love this thing. I love the fly itself here. I think it's awesome.
Oh, you love this?
Yes, I love this.
I thought this is what you didn't like.
No, this is what I love.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's great. And then when he fuses with the telepod?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Wonderful.
I mean, and that's like, I don't know. I think it's like Cronenberg he couldn't get away from this movie without like a final metaphorical warning from, our great Baron of Body Horror about humanity's relationship to technology. Because up to this point, he's not really said anything about it. But then at this point, like at the very end of the movie, he fuses our monster of a protagonist, so to speak,
right,
with the machine that he's been working on. And he's just like, boom, how's that for a metaphor?
Yeah.
Like, don't let technology eat you up, son.
Because you're going to get melded together and then you're going to die.
Cronenberg. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. We haven't talked about the fact that Scumbag, what is his name?
Stathis Baratheon.
Such a name.
Stathis Borans.
Stathis here, we haven't talked about how he's like the good guy at the end of the movie, where I sincerely believe in his trying to help her, because even after he's all messed up and has been, had his ankle and his hand completely disintegrated by acid, he's still trying to help her. And it makes him seem like so much less of a scumbag, and it's really surprising.
It is, like...
Because some of the stuff he says in this movie to her is incredibly horrible.
I mean, like, I don't even remember the last line of dialogue that he has in the movie, because I don't think he even he doesn't really even speak throughout the scene. The last real line of dialogue he has in the movie is probably something really scummy and shitty.
Yeah.
It probably is. I think it's in the scene where
But didn't you say there's a scene... Did we already talk about this? Where there's a scene where she hooks up with him?
There was a deleted scene, I think, where she hooks up with
Did we
him.
talk about it here, or did we talk about it before the podcast?
No, we talked about it here.
Okay.
You're losing your mind.
I'm losing my mind. This is called having not slept all week.
It's all right. It's grad school. But this, this ending where Brundlefly takes the shotgun, grabs it, puts it up against his head, and he's just like, kill me.
But I don't know. I almost feel like that moment is a little much for me.
Really?
Yeah.
You think it's heavy-handed?
It's a little bit much. Like I could have done with just like a touching of the shotgun or something like that.
Okay, you want to go even subtler? Okay, I respect that. I absolutely
and
respect that.
also her like her hesitating and stuff to kill him. No, you'd be like, you just blow it up.
You're beyond help. Like,
yeah. So,
but no, I mean, like, I think without her doing that, you lose empathy for her.
I get it. I totally get it.
Like, it's necessary.
Still.
And that's it.
And we go.
That's just it. That's the end of the movie.
We end the movie.
Brundlefly's dead. And look, Chris Wallace Incorporated, the Fly created by Chris Wallace. The first credit when the credits pop up. And when that happened, apparently, in their early test screenings, when his name popped up, the crowd cheered. Mm-hmm. And one of the producers sitting next to Wallace said, what was it he said? He said, "You're getting an Oscar." Yeah, that's right. After his screening with an audience cheered upon seeing the first credit, producer Stuart Kornfeld, we mentioned it before, turned to Wallace and said, "You're getting the Oscar." And he did. He got the Oscar.
That's fantastic.
So that's
wonderful.
Pretty great. Do we have any final thoughts on The Fly? Did we miss anything? Was there anything? We didn't really talk about Howard Shore's score. It's a wonderful score.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's little that Howard Shore does that I don't like. So
he actually didn't score the first David Cronenberg movie that we did. That was Michael Kamen on The Dead Zone. So Howard Shore, of course, is
Lord of the Rings. Oh, I thought you were talking about what he's done. Oh, well,
yeah. Well, he's done that, of course. But like he's Cronenberg's longtime musical collaborator. So, I think it was strange that the first movie we didn't actually feature a Howard Shore score.
Yeah.
A Howard
since
score.
He generally does collaborate with him. Yeah.
But yeah, great work there. Yeah, I don't know. I think I got across pretty much everything I wanted to say. I could talk a lot longer about The Fly, but it's just because it's such a great movie. It
is a great movie, and it's perfect for our themes this month.
For sci-fi horror. Well, I guess that can wrap us up for today. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. Please subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher, where you can leave us a rating and review. We'd really, really appreciate that. We are out of reviews, remember, so if you leave one for us this week, then we'll probably read it on next week's show. You can follow us on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook. That's where you can get all of the information about the show, all the announcements, all the updates, and our movie still identification game, which is a whole lot of fun if you want to play along with that. Every week, we like to feature a Popcorn Poops podcasting pal. That's one of our contemporaries in podcasting and movie podcasting specifically. And this week, we'd like to feature the Conversations, a film podcast, and you can learn more about them if you stick around with us after our outro. Would you like to announce the next episode?
Yeah, next week, continuing with sci-fi horror here on the Pumpkin Poops, we're going to be watching Ridley Scott's 1979 film, Alien.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. That's going to be a good one. So questions or comments, leave them on our social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter. You can also go to our forums, go to our website and click on the forums. So until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
We are the Pumpkin Poops.
Hi, and welcome to our ad. I'm Max.
And I'm Sam.
And we like to talk about movies.
We combine casual conversation with knowledgeable analysis and trivia.
In our podcast, The Conversations, a film podcast.